take a look at potential issues in sampling as we do it. So what's the whole purpose of all this? The idea here is there's a whole cycle to statistics. So there's some population of interest out there, some group of people, some group of plants, some group of animals. And we don't have the capacity, the ability to talk to everybody in the population. So what we'll do is we'll end up taking a sample. Once we've taken that sample, now we can measure certain things about that group. We can talk about the mean. We can talk about the standard deviation. We can talk about the median of that group. Um, and if we've taken a good sample, like we just talked about before, all the different ways of taking samples, and you could do a cluster, you could do a simple random, you could do a stratified random, whatever is most appropriate for your particular set of data and what you're trying to figure out. If we've taken a good sample and we have good statistics, then we could go ahead and say that these things, we can generalize them as parameters about a population. So we've taken a population, taken a sample, got a statistic that we think is a good parameter, to now talk about a population. So like I said, problems in sampling. The first problem you can come across is voluntary response. So if you think a radio station asks its listeners to call in with their opinions, well, most likely the people that are going to call in, we kind of mentioned this in the previous video, are people that are either really for it or really against it. So you don't really get the pulse of everyone in the community or everyone in the listening audience, because people that are kind of on the fence, they're not going to take the time to call in. So voluntary response could be an issue. Under coverage, so let's say the New York Times conducts a phone survey about people's opinion on the president. Well, the issue here is if they're using the telephone book, cell phones aren't uh, in the telephone book. You know, the homeless people, they have opinions about where the president is and some of the policies affecting how they live day-to-day life. Some people might be in prison, and prisoners don't have access to it. And again, some of the policies that are being created are affecting those people that are incarcerated. The idea of non-response. So let's say a senator decides to conduct a survey of his constituents and calls randomly selected numbers. Hey, there's randomness. That's great, right? Between the hours of 5 and 6. Um, to determine their opinion about a new policy that would increase tax at restaurants. Well, start thinking about that. Between 5 and 6, who's most likely, what's happening? Really start to think about, well, that's probably dinner time. So, one, people just might not pick up the phone because they're eating dinner. Two, you think about if they do pick up, they're probably at home eating, so they probably don't care about the new tax. Those that aren't at home between 5 and 6 and have gone out to eat can't get the phone call, so they can't be um, included in terms of their opinion that they don't want the new tax. So, non-response. That's just, you got to kind of think through the situation, look at, if somebody's going to be left out or not. So biggest issue there is that those that don't respond may differ significantly, right? The people from 5 to 6 that are eating out might say completely different answer, I would assume, than people that are eating in from 5 to 6. And then one more, response bias. And that's just when you have a bad question. So if a survey asks the question, do you believe that the forced busing of students long distances from school, far from their homes, is a policy that should be continued? That's a loaded question. And we've all seen plenty of examples of just terrible questions that basically lead you into one answer. Well, with words like forced and this long distances, far from home, well, nobody would think that's a good idea. So the response bias here, all of a sudden, you might also think about it as just a poorly worded question.